The Slave Market Discovery. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he navigated through the crowded marketplace of Zirian Prime. The humid air of the alien world clung to his skin like a second layer of clothing. 3 years had passed since humanity made first contact with the Galactic Federation, and Marcus had been one of the first humans to venture out into the wider galaxy as an independent trader. The marketplace buzzed with activity from dozens of alien species. Tall insectoid Vorthak clicked their mandibles as they haggled over crystalline energy cells. The slug-like Molari oozed between stalls, their translator devices crackling with electronic interpretations of their chemical communications. Purple-skinned Zalani merchants called out prices for exotic spices that could alter the biochemistry of most known species. Marcus had come to Zerion Prime seeking rare metals for Earth's expanding space program. Humanity was still the newcomer in galactic politics, viewed by most species as primitive barbarians who had barely figured out faster-than-light travel. The condescending attitudes of other species had grown tiresome, but Marcus had learned to keep his frustrations buried beneath a professional demeanor. As he turned down a narrow alley between towering alien architecture, Marcus heard sounds that made his blood freeze. The sharp crack of energy whips echoed off the metallic walls, followed by pained cries that needed no translation. He quickened his pace, drawn by an instinct he couldn't ignore. The alley opened into a smaller courtyard where Marcus witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about the so-called civilized galaxy. A slave auction was in progress, with dozens of beings chained and displayed like livestock. The auctioneer, a massive reptilian Sorok, gestured with one clawed hand while brandishing an energy whip with the other. Marcus had read about slavery in the Outer Rim territories, but seeing it firsthand sent rage coursing through his veins. Most of the slaves appeared to be from primitive worlds that had not yet achieved spaceflight. They cowered in metal cages, their eyes hollow with despair. But one slave caught his attention immediately. She was unlike any species Marcus had encountered in his travels. Standing roughly 5 feet tall, she possessed an elegant humanoid form with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her hair was silver white, flowing like liquid mercury down her back. Most striking were her eyes, a deep violet color that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and sadness. The alien woman stood straighter than the other slaves, her chin raised defiantly despite the metal collar around her neck. When the Sorok auctioneer's whip cracked near her, she didn't flinch. Instead, she stared directly at her tormentor with those remarkable violet eyes. "This one claims to be from the Lyrian sector," the auctioneer announced in galactic standard, his voice a harsh rasp. "Supposedly some kind of nobility from a dead world. But nobles make the best servants once you break their spirit properly." The auctioneer raised his whip again, clearly intending to demonstrate his point. The energy weapon hummed with deadly power as it arced through the air toward the defiant woman. Without thinking, Marcus lunged forward and caught the whip's handle in his bare hand. Pain shot through his arm as the energy discharge coursed through his body, but Marcus held on. The auctioneer stared in shock, his reptilian features twisting with confusion and anger. "Human! You dare interfere with lawful commerce?" the Sorok hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Release my property immediately or face the consequences." Marcus gritted his teeth against the pain and tightened his grip on the whip. "I'm making an offer to purchase this slave." A murmur ran through the crowd of alien buyers. Humans were known to have strange ethical hang-ups about slavery. But few had been foolish enough to openly challenge the established order in the Outer Rim territories. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed to slits. "You would pay for damaged goods? This one has proven difficult to train. Perhaps you humans enjoy the challenge of breaking stubborn spirits." "Name your price," Marcus said simply. The Sorok's tongue flicked out again, and Marcus could almost see the calculations running behind those cold reptilian eyes. Humans were known to pay premium prices for exotic goods, often out of ignorance about true market values. 5,000 Federation credits, the auctioneer announced with obvious satisfaction. Final offer, take it or leave it. The price was outrageous, nearly half of Marcus's available trading capital. But as he looked into the violet eyes of the enslaved woman, he saw something that made the decision easy. She wasn't looking at him with hope or pleading. Instead, her gaze held a mixture of curiosity and what might have been respect. Marcus activated his credit transfer device and authorized the payment. The auctioneer's translator device chimed as the credits entered his account, and his expression shifted to one of greedy satisfaction. Pleasure doing business, human. But I warn you, this one has strange ideas about her supposed royal blood. You may find breaking her spirit more challenging than anticipated. The energy collar around the woman's neck deactivated with a soft beep, and the restraints binding her arms released. She rubbed her wrists where the metal had chafed her pale blue skin, but her eyes never left Marcus's face. "Come on," Marcus said quietly, extending his hand toward her. "Let's get out of here." She hesitated for a moment, studying his face with those remarkable violet eyes. Then she placed her slender hand in his, and Marcus felt an unexpected jolt of something that had nothing to do with energy weapons. They walked through the marketplace in silence, the woman staying close to Marcus's side. He could feel the stares and hear the whispered conversations in dozens of alien languages. A human purchasing a slave was unusual enough, but his obvious protective posture toward his new acquisition was drawing unwanted attention. Marcus led them to a small cantina in the market district, where he had arranged to meet his trading contact. The establishment catered to a rough crowd of smugglers, mercenaries, and other individuals who preferred to keep their business private. It seemed like the safest place to figure out what came next. They found a booth in the back corner, away from the main crowd. Marcus ordered 2 meals and turned his attention to the woman sitting across from him. Up close, he could see that her pale blue skin had an almost luminescent quality, and her silver hair seemed to move with a life of its own despite the still air in the cantina. "What's your name?" Marcus asked in Galactic Standard. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with those intelligent violet eyes. When she spoke, her voice had a melodic quality that made even the harsh consonants of Galactic Standard sound beautiful. "I am Lyrelai of House Astrodorn, daughter of the Eternal Light, guardian of the 7 stars. She paused, and a shadow passed across her features. "Though I suppose those titles mean nothing now that my world is ash and my people are scattered to the void." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "Lyrelai is a beautiful name. I'm Marcus Chen, independent trader from Earth." "Earth," she repeated, pronouncing the word carefully. "The human homeworld. I have heard stories about your species from other slaves in the holding pens. They say humans are weak and primitive, barely worthy of membership in the Galactic Federation." "We're new to space travel," Marcus admitted. "Only made first contact 3 years ago. Most species do see us as primitive barbarians." Lyrelai's expression shifted, becoming more intent. "Yet you risked yourself to help a stranger. You paid a fortune to free someone you had never met. These are not the actions of a primitive barbarian." Their food arrived, interrupting the conversation. Marcus had ordered simple protein dishes that should be safe for most humanoid species. Lyrelai ate with careful, precise movements that spoke of royal training, but Marcus noticed she was clearly very hungry. "How long since you last had a proper meal?" he asked. "Time loses meaning in the slave pens," she replied quietly. "Days, perhaps weeks. The Sarok believe hunger makes slaves more compliant." Marcus felt his anger rising again. "How did you end up there? What happened to your world?" Lyrelai set down her eating utensil and stared into the distance. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of unimaginable loss. The hegemony came without warning, massive ships that blotted out our 3 suns. They said they were bringing order to the chaos of the outer rim, that species like mine were too primitive to govern ourselves. She laughed bitterly. They were not interested in conquest or resources. They wanted to eliminate what they saw as inferior bloodlines. Genocide, Marcus said quietly. Your people have a word for it, Lyrelay noted. Yes, genocide. They glassed our cities from orbit, poisoned our oceans, and hunted down survivors for sport. I was captured while trying to evacuate children to the underground shelters. Marcus clenched his fists under the table. This hegemony, are they part of the Federation? No, but the Federation does nothing to stop them. They claim the Outer Rim territories are outside their jurisdiction. That species there must prove their worthiness for protection. Lyrelay's violet eyes flashed with anger. As if the ability to build starships determines the value of a soul. What will you do now? Marcus asked. I can arrange passage to any Federation world, help you start a new life. Lyrelay studied his face for a long moment. Why did you help me? Truth, human Marcus. Why did you risk yourself for a stranger from a dead world? Marcus considered the question carefully. Because it was the right thing to do. Where I come from, we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Something shifted in Lyrelay's expression. The guarded wariness that had been present since their first meeting began to soften, replaced by what might have been hope. Your species is young, she said slowly, but perhaps there is wisdom in youth. Perhaps those who call you primitive fail to recognize a different kind of strength. What do you mean? Lyrelay leaned forward across the table, her violet eyes intense. There are things about my people, about my bloodline, that the Sauroch slave traders did not understand. Secrets that died with my world, knowledge that the hegemony sought to destroy. What kind of secrets? She glanced around the cantina, making sure they were not overheard. The kind that could change the balance of power in this galaxy. The kind that could give a species like yours the strength to stand against the hegemony and their allies. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Are you talking about technology? Weapons? Something far more valuable, Lyrelay whispered. The true history of this galaxy and humanity's place in it. But such knowledge comes with great responsibility and even greater danger. Before Marcus could respond, his communications device chimed with an urgent message. His trading contact had been delayed indefinitely due to what was described as political complications. Reading between the lines, Marcus suspected their transaction at the slave market had drawn unwanted attention from local authorities. We need to leave this world, he said, showing Lyrelay the message. My ship is at the spaceport. We can be off-planet within the hour. She nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Marcus, you should know that helping me may have consequences you cannot imagine. There are forces in this galaxy that will see your actions today as a declaration of war. Against who? Against the natural order of things, against the belief that some species are born to rule while others are born to serve. Lyrelay stood, her movements graceful despite the ordeal she had endured. But perhaps it is time for that order to be challenged. As they left the cantina together, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a dramatic turn toward something much larger than simple trade and commerce. The woman walking beside him carried herself like royalty, despite her recent enslavement, and her violet eyes held secrets that promised to reshape everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. The spaceport was a chaotic maze of landing pads and warehouse facilities. Marcus's ship, the Wanderer, was a modest cargo vessel designed for long-range hauling. It wasn't much to look at, but it was fast, reliable, and most importantly, it was home. As they approached the ship, Marcus noticed unusual activity around the Spaceport Authority building. Security forces were conducting what appeared to be random inspections of departing vessels. The timing seemed highly suspicious. "Trouble?" Lyrelai asked, following his gaze. "Maybe. We need to get off-world before someone decides to ask uncomfortable questions about my recent purchases." They boarded the Wanderer quickly. Marcus ran through his pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency, while Lyrelai secured herself in the co-pilot's seat. Her presence in the cramped cockpit felt strangely natural, as if she belonged there. "Zerion Control, this is cargo vessel Wanderer, requesting immediate departure clearance," Marcus spoke into his communications array. "Wanderer, you are cleared for departure via Vector 77 Alpha. Have a safe journey." The clearance came surprisingly quickly, which only increased Marcus's suspicion that they were being allowed to leave for reasons that had nothing to do with bureaucratic efficiency. But he wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. The Wanderer lifted off smoothly and climbed toward the edge of Zerion Prime's atmosphere. As the blue-green world fell away below them, Marcus felt some of his tension ease. Whatever complications might be waiting for them, at least they were no longer trapped in the Saurok-controlled territory. "Where are we going?" Lyrelai asked as Marcus programmed their jump coordinates. "Neutral space, at least initially. I have a contact on Freeport Station who can help us figure out our next move." He paused, glancing at her profile as she stared out at the stars. "Unless you have somewhere specific in mind?" "I am the last of my people, Marcus. Everywhere is exile now." The sadness in her voice made something twist in Marcus's chest. He reached over and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." She turned to look at him, and for a moment the mask of royal composure slipped. In her violet eyes, Marcus saw not the daughter of an alien nobility, but a young woman who had lost everything and everyone she had ever known. "Thank you," she said simply. As the Wanderer made the jump to hyperspace, Marcus found himself wondering what secrets Lyrelai carried, and how those secrets might change not just his own life, but the fate of humanity itself. He had acted on instinct in the slave market, driven by a moral imperative he couldn't ignore. But as the stars blurred past the viewports, he began to suspect that impulse might have been the most important decision he would ever make. The galaxy suddenly felt much larger and far more dangerous than it had that morning. But sitting beside Lyrelai as they raced toward an uncertain future, Marcus also felt something he hadn't experienced in years of lonely trading runs. Hope. The ancient secret. 3 days into their journey to Freeport Station, Marcus discovered that traveling with Lyrelai was unlike anything he had experienced in his years as an independent trader. The former princess adapted to life aboard the Wanderer with remarkable grace. But it was her knowledge of galactic navigation and starship operations that truly surprised him. "Your ship's hyperdrive efficiency could be improved by 15%, with minor modifications to the plasma flow regulators," she observed while reviewing the engine diagnostics. Marcus looked up from his meal preparation in the small galley. "You know starship engineering? My people were explorers long before most species achieved spaceflight. We mapped much of this sector of the galaxy millions of years ago." Lyrelai's voice caught slightly on the correction about her people's existence. "Millions of years?" Marcus set down his cooking utensil and moved to sit across from her at the small table. "But the Galactic Federation says that faster-than-light travel was only developed within the last 50,000 years. Lyrelai smiled, but there was no humor in the expression. "The Federation knows very little about true galactic history. They built their understanding on the ruins of civilizations they barely comprehend, and they filled in the gaps with comfortable lies." Over the next several hours, as the Wanderer cruised through hyperspace toward their destination, Leerily began to share stories that challenged everything Marcus thought he knew about the galaxy. She spoke of ancient star-spanning civilizations that rose and fell long before the current galactic powers even existed. She described technologies that made modern Federation science look primitive, and she hinted at conflicts that made the current territorial disputes seem like children's games. Your people, the Lyrians, were part of these ancient civilizations? Marcus asked. We were among the first to achieve true mastery over space and time, she confirmed. But power without wisdom leads to destruction. The ancient ones learned this lesson too late. What happened to them? Lyrelai was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. They encountered something that challenged their understanding of existence itself, something that forced them to make terrible choices. Before Marcus could ask for clarification, their ship's proximity alarms began sounding. They were still 6 hours from their planned exit point, but something massive had appeared on their sensors. That's impossible, Marcus muttered, checking the readings twice. There's nothing charted in this region of space. Lyralee moved to the sensor console, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. Drop us out of hyperspace immediately. But we're in the middle of nowhere. If we exit here, now Marcus! Something in her tone brooked no argument. Marcus activated the emergency hyperspace exit protocols, and the Wanderer dropped back into normal space with a violent shudder that rattled every bolt in the ship. What they found waiting for them defied comprehension. A massive structure hung in the void before them, easily the size of a small moon. It was clearly artificial, constructed from materials that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. The surface was covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as Marcus watched, creating optical illusions that made his eyes water. "What is that thing?" he whispered. Lyralee's face had gone pale, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "It's a Nexus station. I thought they had all been destroyed." "A what?" "Ancient Lyrian technology. Nexus stations were built to serve as gateways between distant regions of the galaxy. But they were also something else." She turned to face him, and Marcus could see she was struggling with some internal decision. "Marcus, there are things about my people, about this galaxy, that you need to know. But once I tell you, there will be no going back. Tell me." Lyralee took a deep breath. The Lyrians were not just another spacefaring species. We were the descendants of beings who came from outside this galaxy, refugees from a cosmic catastrophe that destroyed our home reality. We brought with us knowledge and technologies that the current galactic civilizations could not comprehend. Marcus felt his world view tilting on its axis. "You're saying your people were aliens? Even by galactic standards?" "We were the true aliens, yes. And we carried with us something that certain forces in this galaxy have been seeking for millions of years. Something that the hegemony killed my people to obtain." The Nexus station suddenly came to life. Lights began appearing across its surface in complex patterns, and Marcus felt a strange vibration through the ship's hull. "It's responding to your presence," he realized. "How is that possible?" Lyralee stood and moved toward the ship's airlock. "Because I carry the genetic markers of the royal bloodline. The Nexus stations recognize me as one of their builders' descendants." "Lyralee, wait. Where are you going?" "To show you the truth about this galaxy and about humanity's role in what's coming." Against his better judgment, Marcus followed Lyralee to the airlock. She activated the ship's docking protocols, and to his amazement, the Nexus station responded by extending what appeared to be a docking tube toward the Wanderer. The connection sealed with a soft hiss of equalizing atmosphere. "How do you know it's safe?" Marcus asked as they prepared to cross over. because this station was built by my ancestors to preserve something precious until the time was right, and that time, I believe, has finally come. The interior of the Nexus station was unlike anything Marcus had seen in his travels through Federation space. The corridors were vast and filled with a soft, bioluminescent glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The architecture was organic and flowing, as if the entire structure had been grown rather than constructed. Lyralai led them deeper into the station with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. They passed through chambers filled with incomprehensible technology, vast halls lined with what appeared to be storage containers, and observation decks that offered views of star fields that seemed impossible given their location. The Nexus stations exist partially outside normal space, Lyralai explained when Marcus commented on the strange views. They can observe events across vast distances and even to some extent across time. They finally arrived at what appeared to be a central command chamber. The room was circular, with walls covered in displays showing star charts, alien script, and flowing data streams. At the center stood a pedestal containing what looked like a crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light. "This is why the hegemony destroyed my world," Lyralai said, approaching the crystal. "They knew that my bloodline carried the genetic keys to access these stations." "What are they looking for?" "The same thing every conqueror seeks: power. But not just military power or technological superiority." She placed her hand on the crystal, and the entire chamber came alive with light and sound. "They seek the power to control the fundamental forces of reality itself." The displays around them began showing images and data streams that made Marcus's head spin. Star maps showing the positions of hundreds of ancient stations throughout the galaxy, technical specifications for technologies that seemed like magic, and most disturbing of all, detailed analyses of every major spacefaring species in the current galaxy. "My ancestors didn't just map the stars," Lyralai continued. "They studied the development of every species they encountered. They were looking for something specific." "What?" "A species that could inherit their legacy. A species that possessed the right combination of traits to use ancient Lyrian technology responsibly." She turned to face him, her violet eyes intense. "They were looking for humanity." Marcus stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. Humans only achieved spaceflight recently. We're barely members of the Galactic Federation." "Age of a civilization means nothing compared to the quality of its character." Lyralai gestured toward the displays. "Look at the data, Marcus. See what my ancestors saw in your species." The displays shifted to show detailed analyses of human behavior, culture, and history. Marcus saw assessments of human moral development, evaluations of their capacity for growth and change, and projections of their potential for galactic leadership. According to these records, humanity possesses a unique combination of traits, Lyralai explained. "You have the technological aptitude necessary to understand advanced sciences, but more importantly, you have maintained your capacity for moral growth. Most species, when they achieve spaceflight, become rigid in their thinking. They establish hierarchies and power structures that become unchangeable. But humans continue to evolve." "But we're still so primitive compared to the Federation species." "Are you?" Lyralai activated another display. "Look at how your people responded to first contact with alien species. Most civilizations become either completely isolationist or aggressively expansionist when they discover they are not alone in the universe. But humans did neither. You sought to learn, to trade, to find common ground." Marcus studied the data, seeing patterns he had never noticed before. Human diplomatic missions consistently sought win-win solutions to interspecies conflicts. Human traders were known throughout the galaxy for their fairness and reliability, and human explorers were driven not by conquest, but by curiosity. The ancient Lyrians built these stations as a test, Lyrelay continued. They wanted to see if a species would emerge that could use their technology not for domination, but for protection, for preserving life and promoting growth throughout the galaxy. And you think humans are that species? I know you are. Because you proved it when you saved me from that slave market. You risked yourself for a stranger, not because you expected reward, but because it was right. She moved closer to him, her expression earnest. That is the defining characteristic the Ancient Ones were seeking. Suddenly, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the station. The displays shifted to show external sensor readings, revealing the emergence of multiple ships from hyperspace, large predatory vessels with the distinctive markings of the hegemony. They found us, Lyrelay said grimly. The activation of this station sent out a signal that their sensors can detect. How many ships? Enough to glass a planet. They're not taking any chances this time. Marcus felt cold fear wash over him. What do they want? Me. And now you. Lyrelay turned back to the central crystal. Marcus, I'm going to give you something that will change your life forever, but I need you to understand the responsibility that comes with it. What are you talking about? The ancient Lyrians didn't just build these stations to preserve technology. They built them to preserve something far more valuable, the genetic template for their own species. They knew that someday their direct descendants might be destroyed, but they wanted to ensure their knowledge could be passed on to a worthy successor species. The crystal in the center of the room began to glow brighter, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation in the air. This station contains the complete genetic and technological legacy of the ancient Lyrians. It can rewrite DNA at the molecular level, granting access to abilities and knowledge that no current galactic species possesses. Marcus understood what she was proposing, and the magnitude of it left him speechless. If you accept this legacy, Lyrelay continued, you will become something new, something between human and Lyrian. You will carry the knowledge and power necessary to protect not just humanity, but all life in this galaxy from forces like the hegemony. But what about you? I am already dying, Marcus. The genetic modifications the slave traders used to make me compliant included a slow-acting toxin. I have perhaps days left. She smiled sadly. But through you, my people's legacy will continue. The hegemony ships were moving closer, their weapons charging for an attack that would vaporize the entire station. There's no time, Lyrelay urged. You must choose now. Accept the legacy and the responsibility that comes with it, or let millions of years of accumulated knowledge and wisdom die with us. Marcus looked at the displays showing the approaching hegemony fleet, then at Lyrelay's face, so beautiful and so sad. He thought about the slave market on Zerion Prime, about the casual cruelty he had witnessed, and about the potential for something better. What do I need to do? Place your hand on the crystal beside mine. The station will do the rest. Marcus reached out and pressed his palm against the warm surface of the crystal. Immediately, electricity seemed to course through his entire body. But it wasn't painful. Instead, it felt like awakening from a long sleep. Knowledge flooded into his mind. Sciences beyond imagination, technologies that could reshape worlds, and most importantly, the wisdom to use such power responsibly. He felt his body changing at the cellular level, becoming something more than human, but still fundamentally himself. When the process was complete, Marcus looked at his hands and saw that his skin now had a faint luminescent quality similar to Lyrelay's. But more than that, he could feel the Nexus station responding to his presence, recognizing him as its new master. The fleet, he said, suddenly aware of tactical options that had been impossible moments before. The station's defenses are now under your control, Lyrelay confirmed. But be careful. The power you now possess could easily corrupt a weaker mind. Marcus reached out with senses he hadn't possessed minutes before and took control of the Nexus Station's defensive systems. Ancient weapons that had slept for millions of years came online, and space around the station filled with energy discharges that made the hegemony's weapons look like primitive chemical rockets. The hegemony fleet was destroyed in moments, reduced to expanding clouds of plasma and debris. "Incredible," Marcus whispered. "This is only the beginning," Lyralai said weakly. She was leaning heavily against the console now, her strength clearly fading. "There are hundreds of Nexus stations throughout the galaxy, all waiting for someone with the proper genetic markers to activate them. With their power, you could unite the galaxy against forces like the hegemony." "We could unite them," Marcus corrected, moving to support her. Lyralai smiled but shook her head. "My part in this story is ending, Marcus, but yours is just beginning. The knowledge you now carry includes the location of every Nexus station, every ancient Lyrian artifact, and every piece of technology necessary to transform humanity from a minor Federation member into the galactic power my ancestors envisioned. I can't do this alone. You won't be alone. The genetic modifications I've given you include the ability to grant similar enhancements to others. You can awaken the same potential in other humans, creating a new generation of guardians for the galaxy." As if to confirm her words, Marcus could feel the knowledge settling into his mind. He understood now how to awaken the ancient Lyrian heritage in compatible humans, how to build technologies that could defend entire star systems, and how to unite disparate species under a common cause. "There will be opposition," Lyralai warned, her voice growing weaker. "The current galactic powers will not willingly give up their positions of authority. And there are forces even darker than the hegemony waiting in the void between galaxies." "What forces?" "The things my ancestors fled from. They're still out there, still hungry, still seeking to devour everything in their path. The ancient Lyrians built their technology not just for exploration, but for defense against horrors that current galactic civilizations cannot imagine." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. "And you think they're coming here?" "They follow the spread of advanced civilizations like predators following blood trails. The rapid expansion of species like the Federation has drawn their attention. The time of reckoning approaches." Lyralai's legs gave out, and Marcus caught her before she could fall. Her pale blue skin was growing even paler, and her violet eyes were losing their luminous quality. "I wish we had more time," she whispered. "I would have liked to see what you accomplish with this gift." "You will see it," Marcus said firmly. "I'll find a way to save you. With all this knowledge and technology—" "No, Marcus, death is part of life, and my people's time has passed. But through you, something new will be born. Something that combines the wisdom of the ancient past with the hope of the future." She reached up and touched his face gently. "Promise me something. When you use this power, remember why you first reached for that slave trader's whip. Remember that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves." "I promise." Lyralai smiled one last time, her violet eyes closing peacefully. Then the galaxy has hope after all. As her life slipped away, Marcus felt the full weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was no longer just an independent trader from Earth. He was the inheritor of an ancient legacy, the guardian of technologies that could reshape civilization, and possibly the only hope for defending the galaxy against threats that would make the hegemony look like a minor nuisance. But as he gently closed Lyralai's eyes and said a quiet farewell to the last princess of a murdered world, Marcus Chen also felt something else: determination. The galaxy had shown him its capacity for cruelty and oppression, but it had also shown him that individual acts of courage and compassion could change everything. Standing in the heart of an ancient Nexus station, surrounded by the wisdom of a million-year-old civilization, Marcus began planning how to transform a primitive human species into the galaxy's greatest hope for peace and justice. The universe was about to discover what humanity was truly capable of when given the tools to match their courage. The Human King. 6 months had passed since Marcus Chen inherited the legacy of the ancient Lyrians, and the galaxy was beginning to feel the tremors of change. What had started as one human's impulsive act of compassion in a slave market had evolved into something that was reshaping the very foundations of galactic civilization. Marcus stood on the command deck of the Ascendant, a ship that bore little resemblance to his old trading vessel. Built using ancient Lyrian technology recovered from hidden Nexus stations, the Ascendant was a masterpiece of engineering that combined the wisdom of million-year-old science with human innovation. The ship could travel between galaxies in days, manipulate matter at the quantum level, and defend itself against entire fleets. But the ship was just a tool. The real transformation had been in humanity itself. "Status report," Marcus requested as he entered the bridge. The command crew that turned to address him would have been unrecognizable to anyone who had known them before the awakening. Captain Sarah Rodriguez had been a freighter pilot hauling cargo between Earth and the outer colonies. Now, enhanced with ancient Lyrian genetic modifications, she possessed reflexes and awareness that made her one of the most formidable starship commanders in the galaxy. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant James Park, had once been a xenobiology student whose research grant had been rejected by the Federation Scientific Council. Now he understood alien life forms at levels that made Federation scientists look like children playing with toys. "Long-range sensors are detecting 3 major fleet movements," Captain Rodriguez reported. "The hegemony is massing forces in the Corval sector, apparently preparing for another genocidal campaign. The Federation Council has issued what amounts to an ultimatum demanding that we cease our liberation operations, and our scout ships have confirmed the existence of 17 more Nexus stations in unexplored regions." Marcus nodded, processing the information with mental capabilities that had been enhanced far beyond baseline human norms. The ancient Lyrian modifications had not just given him access to their technology, they had expanded his consciousness to perceive patterns and possibilities that would have been invisible to his unmodified mind. "What about the recruitment centers?" "Better than we projected," Lieutenant Park responded with barely contained excitement. "Word about what we're offering has spread through human colonies faster than we anticipated. We have over 10,000 volunteers requesting genetic enhancement, and the screening process indicates that nearly 70% of them are compatible with the Lyrian modifications." The screening process had been Marcus's first major innovation, combining human and Lyrian knowledge. The ancient Lyrians had been incredibly selective about who could access their technology, requiring specific genetic markers that appeared in only a tiny fraction of most species. But humans, Marcus had discovered, possessed an unusual genetic flexibility that made the vast majority of their population compatible with the enhancements. More importantly, the psychological screening had revealed something remarkable about human nature. Unlike most species that achieved advanced technology, humans showed no significant increase in aggressive or dominating behavior when given enhanced capabilities. Instead, they seemed to become more protective, more collaborative, and more determined to use their abilities for the benefit of others. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Emma Walsh from her station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. President Chen wants to speak with you directly." Marcus allowed himself a brief smile. President Chen was no relation, despite the shared surname, but she had become one of humanity's most effective leaders in the new galactic reality. When other Federation species had demanded that Earth disavow Marcus's actions and surrender all Lyrian technology to the Federation Council, President Chen had instead declared Earth's withdrawal from the Federation and its commitment to what she termed humanity's true destiny among the stars. The decision had not been without consequences. Several Federation species had imposed economic sanctions on human worlds, and there had been open threats of military action. But those threats had evaporated quickly when human ships began demonstrating capabilities that made Federation technology look primitive. "Put her through," Marcus requested. President Chen's image appeared on the main view screen, transmitted across hundreds of light years by communication technology that operated faster than light itself. She looked tired but determined, bearing the weight of leading a species through its most dramatic transformation in recorded history. "Marcus," she said without preamble, "we have a problem. The Federation Council has called an emergency session. They're planning to declare humanity a threat to galactic stability." "What's their reasoning?" "Officially, they're concerned about the rapid militarization of human space and our destabilizing influence on established galactic order. Unofficially, they're terrified. The Zealer Confederacy just offered to join the Human Alliance after we liberated their slave colonies in the Vega sector. 3 more Federation member species have sent discreet diplomatic inquiries about switching sides." Marcus wasn't surprised. The Federation had built its power structure on carefully maintained hierarchies that kept most species in subordinate positions. The sudden emergence of humanity as a major galactic power, combined with their demonstrated willingness to challenge systems of oppression, was causing the entire Federation political structure to collapse. "How much time do we have?" "Days? Maybe hours. Federation intelligence suggests they're planning to strike at Earth directly, hoping that removing our homeworld will force the human colonies to surrender." Marcus felt the ancient Lyrian knowledge stirring in his mind, presenting tactical and strategic options that would have been impossible for baseline humans to conceive. The Federation Council was making a critical error in judgment, assuming that humanity's power structure resembled their own top-down hierarchies. "They don't understand us at all, do they?" Marcus observed. "They think that hitting Earth will decapitate human resistance, but our strength was never centralized." Exactly. The enhanced humans leading the colonial defense forces are more than capable of independent action. And frankly, an attack on Earth might be exactly what we need to unite the rest of humanity completely behind our cause. Marcus nodded. "How many ships can the Federation muster for this attack?" "Intelligence estimates suggest they're assembling a fleet of over 2,000 vessels. Every member species is being required to contribute ships and crews." "They're treating this as an existential threat to their civilization." "In a way, it is," Marcus admitted. "We represent everything their system cannot tolerate: rapid social change, technological advancement not bound by their control, and most dangerous of all, the idea that species can evolve beyond their current limitations." The irony was not lost on him. The Federation preached unity and cooperation between species, but their actual structure was designed to maintain static power relationships. The Zealer Confederacy remained forever subordinate to the Altarian Republic, which in turn answered to the Vorthon hegemony, which was ultimately controlled by the small circle of elder species that had founded the Federation millennia ago. Humanity's emergence threatened that entire pyramid of control not through conquest, but through example. When other species saw humans sharing advanced technology freely, liberating slave colonies, and accepting former enemies as equals, it made the Federation's promises of gradual advancement and earned privileges look like the empty promises they had always been. "There's something else," President Chen continued, her expression growing even more serious. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something troubling. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures from the void between galaxies. Whatever's out there, it's big, and it's heading in our direction." Marcus felt a chill of recognition. The threats that had driven the ancient Lyrians from their home reality were still out there, still hungry. And apparently, they had finally found this galaxy. How long until they arrive? Unknown. The signatures are unlike anything our scientists have ever seen, but the Lyrian knowledge you carry might provide answers. Marcus closed his eyes and reached deep into the inherited memories that had come with his genetic enhancement. The ancient Lyrians had left detailed records of the enemies they had fled, entities that existed partially outside normal space-time and fed on the life energy of entire civilizations. "They're called the Devourers," he said quietly. "They exist in a state between dimensions, moving through space like antibodies through a bloodstream, seeking out signs of advanced civilization. When they find it, they consume everything: matter, energy, even the quantum information that makes up consciousness itself. Can they be fought? The ancient Lyrians tried for millions of years. They developed weapons that could destroy stars, defenses that could hide entire galaxies, and technologies that bent the laws of physics. None of it mattered. The Devourers adapted to every strategy, overcame every defense. Then how did the Lyrians escape? They didn't escape. They sacrificed their entire civilization to buy time for a few refugees to flee to this galaxy. And they spent their remaining years building the Nexus stations and developing the genetic enhancement protocols, hoping that someday a species would emerge that could succeed where they had failed." President Chen was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the magnitude of the threat. And they believed humanity could be that species. They believed we could find a solution they never considered. The Lyrians were incredibly advanced, but they were also rigid in their thinking. They approached every problem as an engineering challenge to be solved with technology. But humans have always been survivors first and scientists second. We adapt, we innovate, we find ways to win that don't rely on having the biggest weapons or the strongest defenses. What do you need from Earth? Time and trust. I need to activate every remaining Nexus station and enhance every compatible human we can find. When the Devourers arrive, we're going to need capabilities that make current galactic technology look like stone tools. You'll have whatever support Earth can provide. But Marcus, the Federation fleet will reach Sol system in less than 48 hours. We need to deal with that threat first." Marcus smiled grimly. "Actually, the Federation attack might be exactly what we need. Nothing unites disparate groups like a common enemy." "You have a plan." "I have the beginning of one, but it's going to require taking some enormous risks." After ending the communication with President Chen, Marcus called a meeting of his senior staff. The conference room aboard the Ascendant featured a holographic display system that could project detailed three-dimensional maps of the entire galaxy. As his enhanced human officers filed in, Marcus activated displays showing the current strategic situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we're about to face the first major test of everything we've built. The Federation is committing to a massive attack on Earth, and our response will determine whether humanity becomes a footnote in galactic history or the foundation of something entirely new." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward, studying the tactical displays. 2,000 ships is more than we can match with conventional forces, even with our technological advantages. "Conventional forces, yes," Marcus agreed. "But we're not going to fight a conventional battle." He gestured, and the display changed to show the locations of all known Nexus stations throughout the galaxy. The ancient Lyrians built their stations as more than just repositories of technology and knowledge. When activated simultaneously, they form a network that can manipulate space-time on a galactic scale. Lieutenant Park's eyes widened with understanding. "You're talking about turning the entire galaxy into a weapon." "Not a weapon, a shield. And more than that, a transformation engine." Marcus activated another display showing theoretical energy patterns. "If we can synchronize the activation of all Nexus stations, we can create a field effect that will fundamentally alter the nature of space itself within our galaxy. Alter it how? The Devourers exist partially outside normal space-time. They can enter our reality, but they can't fully manifest here without tremendous effort. If we change the fundamental constants of space within our galaxy, we can create an environment where they simply cannot exist. Communications Officer Walsh looked skeptical. That sounds incredibly dangerous. What happens to the rest of us when you change the fundamental constants of space? Everything evolves, Marcus said simply. Every species in the galaxy will be forced to adapt to new physical laws. Most will not only survive, but become something greater than they were before. The genetic modifications we've been developing will help humans lead that transition, but ultimately every species will have the opportunity to transcend their current limitations. And the Federation fleet? Marcus smiled. They're about to become unwitting participants in the greatest transformation in galactic history. The next 36 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Human ships scattered throughout the galaxy began moving toward their assigned Nexus stations, while enhanced human crews worked around the clock to prepare the ancient systems for simultaneous activation. The process required precise timing and enormous amounts of energy, but the potential results would reshape the galaxy forever. Meanwhile, the Federation fleet continued its advance toward Earth. Long-range sensors showed the massive armada moving through space like a dark tide of destruction. 2,000 ships representing dozens of species, united in their determination to crush humanity's challenge to the established order. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Ascendant as they approached the final Nexus station in their sector. Around him, his enhanced human crew worked with an efficiency and precision that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. They were no longer the same species that had first stumbled into galactic civilization. They had become something new, humanity's first step toward a truly cosmic destiny. All stations report ready, Captain Rodriguez announced. Nexus network standing by for synchronized activation. Federation fleet has entered Sol system, Communications Officer Walsh reported. Earth Defense Forces are moving to intercept, but they're massively outnumbered. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Everything that had begun with a simple act of compassion in an alien slave market had led to this crucial decision. In the next few minutes, he would either save the galaxy or destroy it. Begin activation sequence, he ordered. Across the galaxy, ancient Lyrian technology that had slept for millions of years came online simultaneously. The energy requirements were enormous, drawing power from stellar cores and dimensional rifts that the Lyrians had tapped in their final desperate years. But as the network synchronized, something unprecedented began to happen. Space itself began to change. The Federation fleet, approaching Earth with weapons charged and boarding parties ready, suddenly found themselves in the middle of a transformation that defied comprehension. Ships designed to operate according to well-understood physical laws discovered that those laws no longer applied. Faster-than-light drives failed as the nature of space-time shifted around them. Weapon systems designed to channel specific types of energy found themselves unable to function as the fundamental forces of the universe recalibrated themselves. But rather than destroying the Federation ships, the transformation began changing them. Hulls that had been constructed from ordinary metals started exhibiting properties of Lyrian smart materials. Computer systems that had operated on binary logic began expanding into quantum processing arrays. Most importantly, the organic crews aboard those ships felt the same genetic awakening that had transformed humanity. Within hours, the Federation fleet that had come to destroy Earth found themselves becoming something entirely new. The rigid species hierarchies that had defined their civilization for millennia began dissolving as enhanced awareness allowed them to perceive the arbitrary nature of their social structures. Captain Rodriguez monitored the transformation from the Ascendant's bridge. Incredible. The entire Federation fleet is evolving. Their ships are integrating Lyrian technology automatically, and their crews are adapting to the genetic enhancements. This is what the ancient Lyrians truly intended, Marcus realized. Not just to preserve their technology for a single successor species, but to create the conditions for all galactic life to transcend its limitations. Lieutenant Park looked up from his sensor readings with excitement. "Sir, we're detecting similar transformations throughout Federation space. Every world, every space station, every ship in the galaxy is being upgraded to Lyrian technology standards. But more than that, every sentient being is gaining access to the genetic enhancements. What about the species that were hostile to the transformation? That's the remarkable thing. The enhanced awareness seems to be eliminating the psychological factors that led to conflicts in the first place. Species that were natural enemies are suddenly able to perceive their fundamental unity. The hegemony's genocidal campaigns have stopped because their crews can no longer comprehend why they were killing other sentient beings." Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what true victory looked like, not the defeat of enemies, but their transformation into allies. But even as he celebrated the success of the galactic transformation, his enhanced senses detected something that chilled him to the bone. Long-range sensors were picking up the approaching signatures of the Devourers, and they were accelerating toward the galaxy at velocities that should have been impossible. "They know what we've done," he realized. "The transformation has created exactly the kind of advanced civilization signature that draws their attention." "How long until they arrive?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "Days, maybe hours. And when they do, we'll face the ultimate test of everything we've built." Marcus moved to the command console and opened a communication channel to every enhanced being in the galaxy. Humans, former Federation species, even the transformed hegemony forces would need to hear what he had to say. "This is Marcus Chen, speaking to all free beings in our galaxy. We have achieved something unprecedented, the voluntary evolution of an entire galactic civilization. But our transformation has attracted the attention of entities that exist only to consume and destroy advanced life. In the coming hours, we will face a threat that has destroyed countless galaxies before ours." He paused, feeling the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. "But we are not the same species that these Devourers have faced before. We are not the ancient Lyrians, powerful but rigid in their thinking. We are not the countless civilizations that tried to fight extinction with bigger weapons and stronger defenses. We are something new, a civilization built on the foundation of cooperation, adaptation, and the absolute refusal to abandon those who need protection." Throughout the galaxy, enhanced beings listened to his words and felt the truth behind them. They had become something greater than the sum of their parts, a collective consciousness that retained individual identity while sharing common purpose. The Devourers feed on the life energy of civilizations, but they have never encountered a civilization like ours. They have never faced beings who willingly share their strength with others, who grow stronger through cooperation rather than competition. When they arrive, they will find not a collection of separate species fighting for survival, but a single galactic family united in defense of everything we hold sacred. As if summoned by his words, massive tiers in space-time began opening at the edge of the galaxy. Through those rifts came entities that existed partially outside normal reality, beings of pure hunger that had consumed entire galactic clusters. The Devourers had arrived. But as they emerged into the transformed space of the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. The very nature of reality that humanity and their allies had created began affecting the Devourers themselves. Entities that had existed for eons as pure consumption and destruction found themselves experiencing something they had never known: the possibility of growth, cooperation, and creation. The first Devourer to fully manifest in the galaxy's new reality stopped its advance and broadcast a signal that was somehow understood by every enhanced being within 1,000 light-years. "What? Is this sensation?" the entity asked, its voice carrying harmonics that bypassed language and spoke directly to consciousness. "We have consumed 1,000,000,000,000 galaxies, devoured countless civilizations, but we have never felt this." Marcus smiled and broadcast his response not just to the devourer, but to every enhanced being in the galaxy. "You're feeling what it means to be part of something greater than yourself. You're experiencing the possibility that existence can be about more than just consumption and survival. You're discovering what it means to belong to a family." The transformation of the devourers took longer than the evolution of galactic species had, but it was no less complete. Entities that had spent millions of years as cosmic parasites began to understand concepts like cooperation, creativity, and love. Instead of consuming the galaxy, they began contributing to it, sharing knowledge and abilities that helped every species continue evolving toward something even greater. And at the center of it all, Marcus Chen found himself in a position he had never sought, but had somehow always been destined for. Not as a conqueror or ruler, but as a catalyst for transformation. The galaxy's diverse species, united by their enhanced awareness and shared commitment to growth, looked to him not as a king in the traditional sense, but as the individual who had shown them what they could become, standing on the bridge of the ascendant. As reports poured in from throughout the galaxy about new alliances, breakthrough discoveries, and species transcending limitations they had thought were permanent, Marcus reflected on the chain of events that had brought them to this moment. It had all started with a simple choice: to protect a stranger from cruelty. That single act of compassion had led to the transformation of not just humanity, but every form of sentient life in the galaxy. The slave markets were closed forever. The rigid hierarchies of the old Federation had dissolved into cooperative networks. Even the cosmic forces of destruction had been transformed into allies in the ongoing project of galactic evolution. "Sir," Captain Rodriguez said quietly, "the Enhanced Council is requesting your guidance on the next phase of our expansion. We've been offered opportunities to extend our transformation to neighboring galaxies." Marcus smiled, looking out at the stars that now held infinite possibilities for growth and discovery. "Tell them we'll help any civilization that wants to evolve, but we'll never force our path on others. True strength comes from the choice to grow, not from the power to compel." As he spoke, Marcus felt the presence of every enhanced being in the galaxy, human and alien alike, united in their commitment to a future where cruelty and oppression were impossible because every sentient being understood their fundamental connection to all other life. He was no longer Marcus Chen, independent trader. He had become something greater, the first citizen of a galaxy where every being had the opportunity to become the best possible version of themselves. And in that transformation, humanity had finally found its true destiny among the stars. The universe stretched out before them, infinite and full of promise, waiting for the next chapter in the greatest story ever told. The evolution of consciousness itself toward something that transcended every limitation that had ever constrained it. And it had all begun with one human's refusal to look away when he saw injustice, and one alien princess's faith that there were still beings in the universe who would risk everything to do what was right.